Hey guys, with Avengers Endgame having hit the theaters, the long-running superhero saga from Marvel is finally drawn to an epic finale. Yet, if you haven't really followed the series through the years, the storyline may have you all mixed up. Here's exactly what you need to know on the Avengers timeline leading up to the Endgame film. Be warned, there are spoilers for those who haven't seen all the films, and this timeline takes into consideration only the Marvel Cinematic Universe and not the comics. Okay, take a deep breath, for here we go. Before proceeding, do subscribe to our channel for more amazing videos. From ancient times, everything began with the existence of 6 singularities. These were called space, reality, power, time, mind, and soul. Do note at this time the Infinity Stones were not in existence. It was just the singularities. Following this, the Dark Elves came into existence and traveled to the 9 realms in an effort to rule them. These Dark Elves were seen in Thor, the Dark World. Following this, 4 cosmic entities, namely infinity, eternity, death, and entropy, came together to create the Infinity Stones from the singularities that existed. Following this, the Elders of the universe came into being. We know them as the Grandmaster and the Collector, and they were seen on screen in Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok. Following this, Ego, the living planet, came into being as a celestial. Flash forward to a few thousands of years ago when the Kree, human and Asgardian civilizations emerge. The Kree experiments on Earth gave rise to genetically enhanced Inhumans whose abilities were triggered by a process called Terrigenesis. This process was initiated by the Reaper's race of Kree who wanted soldiers with enhanced abilities in the many wars that they were fighting. There was a series created by ABC on the Inhumans and the Inhuman royal family led by Black Bolt that ran for 1 season. Around the same time, Agamotto, the Sorcerer Supreme, found the masters of the mystic arts, created the Book of the Vishanti, and made 3 sanctuaries on Earth to shield the planet from forces such as Dormammu, who is the Lord of the Dark Dimension. Following this, the Great Convergence occurred, an event that happens every 5,000 years during which the 9 realms get aligned. The convergence leads to wormholes that allow matter to move between realms. Taking advantage of this convergence, Malekith, the ruler of the Dark Elves, attempts to destroy the 9 realms using the Ether, which is the Reality Stone. However, Odin's father Bor leads the Asgardian army and defeats Malekith and hides the Ether. For those who don't remember, Malekith was seen in Thor, the Dark World. After the passage of some time, Bor is succeeded by Odin Borson, who along with his daughter Hela conquers the 9 realms. However, Hela grew too ambitious and even attempted to overthrow her own father. This causes many Asgardians to die, but Hela was finally defeated by Odin and banished forever into Hell. We see Hela make her big screen debut in Thor Ragnarok. Years later, in 965 CE, was the Battle of Tonsberg, in which the Frost Giants attempted to conquer Earth, also referred to as Midgard. The Frost Giants, also known as Jotuns, are met in battle by Odin, who managed to subdue them, take away their casket of eternal winters, and even sign a truce with the Frost King Laufey. This battle is especially noted as it is during this time that Odin discovers the abandoned baby Loki and adopts him as his own, taking him back to his home to be raised alongside Thor. Hope you got all the facts okay till now, guys. We know it's a lot to take in. Next, we look as the action shifts to the earthly kingdom of Wakanda. A vibranium meteorite crashes into Africa several centuries before current time. This leads to a huge war among all the African tribes. At the height of conflict, an unknown warrior receives a vision from the panther goddess Bast and was led to a heart-shaped herb which gave him superhuman strength and made him the first Black Panther and king of Wakanda, who united all the tribes. The Wakandan people alone know the secret of vibranium and are able to harness its technology. They do not wish to share this knowledge with the world for fear of their country becoming a target, so they appear to the modern world as a backward nation. During the time that now passes, several crucial events occur. These are as follows. In 1197 CE, a defector from the Asgardian Berserker army, Elliot Randolph, comes to Midgard and hides the Berserker staff by breaking it into 3 pieces, which he keeps in hidden locations across Europe. These locations are a tree in Norway, a Spanish crypt, and an Irish church. Around 1342 CE, the Ancient One comes into being. She made her first appearance in Doctor Strange as the one who trains him in the mystic arts. Around 1409 CE, Odin, king of Asgard, hides the Tesseract in Tonsberg, Norway. Between 1900 and 1950, the action and timeline of events now shifts to the years between 1900 and 1950. The characters that come into prominence in this era are the ones that truly play major roles in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First up is the assassination of President McKinley, orchestrated by the Council of Nine. This action lays the ground for events of conflict to come in world politics. The global conflict saw the start of World War I in 1914. During this war, 3 main Marvel characters came into existence. In 1917, Howard Stark and James Buchanan Barnes are born. A year later sees the birth of the leader of the Avengers, Captain America, known to the world as Steve Rogers. 3 years later, in 1921, Margaret Peggy Carter is born. She went on to play a major role in Steve Rogers' life, especially during his contribution in World War II that spanned from 1939 to 1945. In 1930, a German scientist, Dr. Abraham Erskine, begins his experimentation on the super soldier serum. A few years later, Johann Schmidt, aka Red Skull, begins his search for the Tesseract. A few years later, World War II begins in 1939, the same year that Howard Stark founds Stark Industries. During the war, Steve was repeatedly rejected by the US Army for his frail physique. Around the same time, Johann Schmidt injected himself with the super soldier serum, thus transforming himself into the Red Skull, and made his first appearance on screen in Captain America, the First Avenger. In 1943, Steve Rogers is chosen by Dr. Abraham Erskine for the Super Soldier program. After a brief stint in Hollywood, Steve Rogers, as Captain America, leads the Allied forces in the war against Hydra, led by the Red Skull. Towards the end of the World War in 1945, the Howling Commandos capture Hydra's lead scientist Arnim Zola and Bucky Barnes. One of the commandos falls from the train during the mission and is presumed dead. In the same year, the Red Skull is defeated by Captain America and his forces. Red Skull vanishes on touching the Tesseract and is presumed dead. Meanwhile, Captain America crashes Valkyrie and is also given up for dead by most until he's discovered several decades later, frozen in ice but very much alive. In 1949, in remembrance of Steve Rogers, Howard Stark and Peggy Carter form SHIELD, which is the abbreviation for Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division. In the meantime, Zola, who is recruited by SHIELD in Operation Paperclip, ends up creating a newer version of Hydra by taking on recruits within the intelligence agency. Zola tracks down and captures Bucky Barnes, prosthetically modifies his body by replacing his lost arm, erases his memory, and keeps him cryogenically frozen to be used as the Winter Soldier when the time comes. Over the course of the next few years, Hydra secretly orchestrates many political upsets such as the Vietnam War and the assassination of President John F. Kennedy for their own ends. Their main warrior is the Winter Soldier, aka Bucky, who to the rest of the world is unknown to be alive. Over the next few years, future Avengers such as Bruce Banner, Clint Barton, Tony Stark, James Rhodes, and Carol Danvers are born. In 1972, a terminal illness claims the life of Arnim Zola, and his consciousness is uploaded into a SHIELD bunker computer system in New Jersey. This is shown in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. In 1978, the celestial being Ego takes human form and comes to Earth to plant an extension of himself on the planet and falls in love with Meredith Quill, leading to the birth of Peter Quill in 1980. Peter Quill grows up to be Star-Lord, a half-human and half-celestial being who makes his first appearance in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Meanwhile, the Mad Titan Thanos kills Nebula and Gamora's families in 1987 and adopts them as his daughters. The two girls become skilled assassins. In the same year, Hank Pym, also known as Ant-Man, and his wife Janet Van Dyne, known as Wasp, are working for S.H.I.E.L.D. On a mission to disarm a Russian missile, Wasp chooses to shrink to subatomic size to disable the missile and gets stuck in the quantum realm. The following year, Meredith Quill dies and her son Peter gets abducted by Ravagers under the instructions of Ego. In 1989, Carol Danvers, a US Air Force pilot, is working with Dr. Wendy Lawson on Project Pegasus, which involved the Tesseract, which is now in S.H.I.E.L.D's possession. The Tesseract came into the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. through Howard Stark, who found it in the ocean floor when looking for Captain America in 1945. Unknown to Danvers and anyone else, Dr. Lawson was in secret a Kree operative by the name of Mar-Vell. While Dr. Lawson and Danvers were doing a test run of the plane, it is attacked by a Kree Star Force ship and crashes. Dr. Lawson is killed, but in her dying moments reveals her true identity. In an effort to foil the plans of Yon-Rogg, the leader of the Kree Star Force warriors, Carol Danvers attempts to destroy the plane's engine, which comprises energy from the Tesseract. This leads to a huge explosion that gives her her powers. Yon-Rogg then kidnaps Danvers and takes her to Hala, where he wipes her memory and trains her as a Kree warrior by the name of Fizz. She spends 6 years on Hala with no memory of her past. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Hank Pym resigns from S.H.I.E.L.D. when he discovers that they are trying to replicate the Pym particle without his knowledge. Forward to 1991. A key event occurs in the Marvel Cinematic Universe when Howard and Maria Stark were assassinated by the Winter Soldier. The repercussions of this assassination were seen much later in the Marvel storyline. The following year, in 1992, in Oakland, California, two men are planning a violent mission to start a race war. Minutes later, their planning is interrupted by the arrival of Dora Milaje and the King of Wakanda, T'Chaka. The following interaction reveals that one of the men planning the mission is Prince Njobu, who is T'Chaka's brother. It is also revealed that the right-hand man Zuri is a secret informative for T'Chaka. This infuriates Njobu, who attempts to kill Zuri. T'Chaka intervenes and ends up killing Njobu. Njobu's son Eric has seen the departure of the Wakandan ship and returns home to find his father murdered. This sets young Eric on the path of vengeance, where he becomes a Black Ops mercenary by the name of Killmonger. 1995. Having trained for 6 years as a Kree warrior, Carol Danvers, aka Fizz, is sent on a mission with her team. Unfortunately, the mission goes awry and Fizz is captured by the Skrulls. The Skrulls scan through her memory and find clues to the Tesseract's whereabouts. Fizz ultimately breaks free and fights her way through the Skrull ship and lands back on Earth. On Earth, Fizz is met by a young Nick Fury as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who has an encounter of his own with the Skrulls and becomes aware of the alien threat. Fizz and Fury now decide to join forces and work together. Unaware of the fact that Dr. Wendy Lawson is long dead, Fizz and Fury attempt to track her down, and this leads them to a Project Pegasus facility. They stumble upon records that reveal that Dr. Wendy Lawson was actually Kree and that Fizz had a life on Earth prior to being part of Kree Star Force. They also learn about the only witness of the explosion that gave Fizz her power. While escaping the facility on a prototype Quinjet, they encounter Goose, Lawson's pet cat, who escapes with them. Talos arrives at childhood friend Maria Rambeau's family home to gather support. Talos, Fizz, Rambeau, and Fury team up to find the Tesseract. Carol Danvers reveals that the Tesseract is in Dr. Wendy Lawson's secret lab in a Kree Imperial ship revolving around the Earth. Carol Danvers unlocks her full power and battles the Star Force and ends up defeating them. In the ensuing chaos, Goose is revealed to be an alien species called a Flurkin, and she swallows the Tesseract. Meanwhile, Carol Danvers sets out on a mission to find the Skrulls a new home. Back on Earth, inspired by Danvers' heroism, Fury realizes that the Earth needs heroes to protect it. Upon studying Danvers' file, he finds her Air Force call sign called Avenger, which leads to the concept of the Avengers Initiative. In the meanwhile, Goose vomits the Tesseract back on Fury's desk. 21st Century, Phase 1. Flash forward to 2005, Bruce Banner is working to replicate Dr. Erskine's super soldier serum under the orders of American Army General Thaddeus Ross. Desperate for success, Banner tests the serum on himself, which transforms him into his monstrous alter ego, the Hulk. To save himself from being turned into a weapon for the US Army, Banner goes on the run for 6 years. 2008, Tony Stark, as the CEO of Stark Industries, travels to Afghanistan to demonstrate a new long-range missile called Jericho. While being escorted back to an airstrip, he is attacked and kidnapped by a terrorist group called the Ten Rings, which is later revealed to be controlled by Obadiah Stane, an old-time associate of Howard Stark and guardian of Tony Stark during his younger years. While in captivity, Stark is forced to build the Jericho missile that he had previously demonstrated for the use of the Ten Rings. While agreeing to their demand, Tony Stark secretly builds the first Iron Man suit assisted by fellow captive Ho Yinsen. Also, Tony Stark builds a mini arc reactor to keep bomb shrapnel from entering his heart and killing him. Using the suit, Tony Stark escapes and returns to the US and shuts down his weapons manufacturing unit as a means of taking accountability for his product's contribution to wars. This does not sit well with Obadiah Stane. Tony Stark now creates a more advanced Iron Man suit while Obadiah Stane does the same. A final battle sees Stane die in an explosion. In the meanwhile, the fugitive Bruce Banner is in contact with a fellow scientist from New York in order to cure himself and think of a normal life. Meanwhile, Thaddeus Ross recruits British soldier Emil Blonsky, who ultimately becomes the Abomination, but is defeated by Hulk in a battle between the two monsters. Hulk is again on the run while still under the radar of S.H.I.E.L.D. Few years after the events of Iron Man 1, Tony Stark attracts unwanted attention from the US Senate and Ivan Vanko, the son of Anton Vanko, who was an old disgruntled partner of Howard Stark. The Senate attempts to confiscate the Iron Man technology and Ivan Vanko attempts to kill Stark, who already is dying of palladium poisoning. Nick Fury, attempting to recruit Stark to the Avengers initiative, places Natasha Romanoff undercover at Stark Industries as Natalie Rushman. Using an old video from his father, Tony Stark creates a new replacement for the palladium in his arc reactor. Later on, with the help of Black Widow and James Rhodes, who is now War Machine, Iron Man defeats Vanko. Now Tony and Fury establish a partnership. At the same time, in the eternal realm of Asgard, Thor, the god of thunder and son of Odin, is being crowned king of Asgard. However, the ceremony is interrupted by frost giants attempting to steal the casket of eternal winters. In an attempt to get even, Thor takes his adoptive brother Loki, Lady Sif and the Warriors 3 to Jotunheim against his father Odin's wishes. The reckless actions of Thor on Jotunheim ends up breaking the truce with Asgard. Thor's disobedience leads to his father to banish him to Earth and deem him unworthy of his trusty hammer, Mjolnir. On Earth, Thor enlists the help of Jane Foster to get his hammer back, fails to do so and is captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. Meanwhile in Asgard, Odin falls ill and Loki assumes the throne. He devises a strategy to allow Laufey and a few frost giants into Asgard to kill Odin. Thor is informed by friends of Loki's plans and decides to go back to Asgard to confront him. A battle between Loki and Thor, where Thor is forced to destroy the Bifrost, which stops him from returning to Jane as promised. Now, we switch to the events of the first Avengers in 2012. S.H.I.E.L.D. is testing the Tesseract to make weapons to deal with larger threats. The presumably dead Loki arrives at the facility to steal the Tesseract. In response, Nick Fury assembles the Iron Man, Black Widow, Hulk, Thor, Captain America and Hawkeye to find Loki and the Tesseract. After a thrilling battle, Loki is captured and taken to Asgard, and the greater threat behind him is revealed to be Thanos. 21st Century Phase 2. In 2013, a new terrorist threat named the Mandarin emerges, which was masterminded by Aldrich Killian, who crossed paths with Tony Stark in 1999 and was upset by the latter's rude behavior. Killian's plan for murdering the US president and inducing terrorism in the world is stopped by Tony Stark with the help of War Machine and love interest Pepper Potts. Shifting to Asgard, Loki is presented to Odin to answer for his crimes on Earth. Odin imprisons Loki for life. Meanwhile, Thor's love interest Jane searches for Thor and stumbles upon the ether, which is revealed to be the Reality Stone. Malekith awakens and follows Foster and Thor to Asgard, where he kills Thor's mother. Thor defeats Malekith, recaptures the Ether, and Loki is once again presumed dead. The Ether now goes to the Collector for safekeeping. In 2014, Captain America is working as a SHIELD operative. The Winter Soldier assassinates Nick Fury. Captain America teams up with Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon, and Black Widow to investigate further. This leads to the revelation that Hydra has been growing inside S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Winter Soldier is actually Bucky Barnes. Rogers takes a final stand to destroy Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. and save Bucky. Meanwhile, Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, travels to Morak to steal an orb. He is pursued by Korath, who is working for Kree fanatic Ronan. Unknown to him, the orb contains the Power Stone. With the help of his Guardians of the Galaxy team including Gamora, Drax, Rocket Raccoon and Groot, Quill defeats the Kree fanatic Ronan and the Power Stone is handed for safekeeping to the Nova Corps. Back on Earth in 2015, the Avengers are attempting to end Hydra for good. Stark and Banner create Ultron, a program meant to continue the work of the Avengers using the Loki Scepter, which is in truth the Mind Stone. However, Ultron, once created, has different views and believes humanity has to be destroyed to forge complete peace. The Avengers struggle against Ultron until they manage to get Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver to fight on their side. Vision too makes his first appearance in Age of Ultron. Together, the Avengers bring down Ultron and destroy the city of Sokovia, which was meant to carry Ultron's plans of world destruction. Thanos keeps watch on all the events and with the defeat of Ultron, decides to take things in his own hands. Apart from the global chaos, Scott Lang, a talented thief, unknowingly steals the Ant-Man suit from Hank Pym's house. Pym, who has actually orchestrated the robbery, recruits Lang as the next Ant-Man to destroy a replica of the Ant-Man suit which is being made by an old student of Hank Pym, Darren Cross. 21st Century, Phase 3. After the Age of Ultron, the Avengers are in Lagos tracking Crossbones in an event marked by violence that calls for the Sokovia Accords. During the signing of these accords, a bombing at the UN claims the life of T'Chaka, the king of Wakanda, now leaving his son T'Challa as the new Black Panther. Winter Soldier is falsely blamed for this attack and comes under the radar. This leads to a tense battle which ensues between Captain America, Falcon, Ant-Man, Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch and Winter Soldier on one side and Iron Man, War Machine, Vision, Spider-Man, Black Widow and Black Panther on the other side. War Machine gets paralyzed and Captain America and Winter Soldier escape. It is also revealed that the Winter Soldier had been the one to assassinate Tony Stark's parents and that Captain America was aware of this, thus creating a rift between Rogers and Stark. Meanwhile, the king-to-be of Wakanda, Prince T'Challa, returns home to be crowned king. Eric Killmonger arrives, seemingly defeats T'Challa and ascends the throne. T'Challa, healed by M'Baku and his Jabari tribe, returns and defeats Killmonger, thus averting global crisis. In the final moments of the Black Panther film, T'Challa decides to open Wakanda to the rest of the world. Later that same year, brilliant yet arrogant neurosurgeon Stephen Strange injures his hands beyond repair. He travels to Kamartaj and meets the Ancient One who trains him in the mystic arts. Upon learning of the threat of dark entity Dormammu, Doctor Strange finds himself in the middle of a mystical battle against the zealot Caecilius. Doctor Strange, unable to beat Caecilius, goes to directly confront Dormammu. In this face-off, Doctor Strange manages to trap Dormammu in a time loop until the dark entity agrees to end his assault on Earth. In search of the Infinity Stones, Thor gets captured by Surtur. The god of thunder defeats Surtur to prevent him from bringing about Ragnarok, the fated destruction of Asgard. At the same time, Loki is shown to be alive and impersonating Odin. With the help of Doctor Strange, Loki and Thor find their father Odin, who is dying. Odin's death frees the previously imprisoned Hela, who fights her brothers and destroys Mjolnir. The two brothers are stranded on Sakaar, where they are taken to the Grandmaster, and they surprisingly run into the Hulk, who is used as a champion in gladiator fights. After fighting each other to a draw, Thor and Hulk hatch a plan for escape and reach Asgard successfully. They have one last face-off with Hela in which Thor loses his eye, and in a final effort to kill the overly powerful Hela, Thor instructs Loki to resurrect Surtur, who defeats Hela. Thor sets a course to Earth with the remaining Asgardians, and on the way they run into Thanos. Unknowing to all, Loki has once again stolen the Tesseract. Infinity Wars. Thanos has now started collecting the Infinity Stones. He already has the Power Stone and takes the Tesseract for the Space Stone. Thanos kills Loki and leaves Thor for dead. Hulk warns Doctor Strange and Tony Stark of Thanos. Doctor Strange is captured by Ebony Maw, and Iron Man and Spider-Man follow him to rescue him and the Time Stone. While responding to a distress call, the Guardians of the Galaxy find an unconscious Thor in space. Thor, Groot, and Rocket go to Nidavellir to create a new weapon for Thor, and the rest of the Guardians go to nowhere, which is where the Collector keeps the Reality Stone. Unfortunately, they are too late, and Thanos has already taken that stone. There, Gamora gets captured by Thanos. Thanos keeps torturing Nebula to get information from Gamora about the location of the Soul Stone. This leads them to Vormir, where the Red Skull tells Thanos that the Soul Stone requires a sacrifice of someone that he loves the most. Thanos sacrifices Gamora and now gets the Soul Stone. Meanwhile, Iron Man and Spider-Man defeat Ebony Maw and reach Titan, where they meet Star-Lord, Mantis, and Drax. Doctor Strange goes forward in time to see the possibilities of the coming conflict. He informs Iron Man of all the total 14,605 futures. Only one ends with the Avengers defeating Thanos. Meanwhile, back on Nidavellir, Thor and his companions meet Eitri the dwarf, who forges Stormbreaker for Thor. Back on Earth, Vision and Scarlet Witch are attacked for the Mind Stone by Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight. Captain America, Falcon, and Black Widow intervene, and they go to Wakanda to try to remove the stone from Vision's head. Thanos arrives in Titan, and Mantis uses her powers to subdue him, while Parker and Stark try to remove the gauntlet that has the Infinity Stones. They are almost successful until Star-Lord learns of Gamora's death at Thanos' hands. This causes him to attack Thanos, who awakens and overpowers everyone around him. Thanos injures Iron Man near death, and to save him, Doctor Strange willingly gives the Time Stone to Thanos, who now has 5 stones. Back in Wakanda, with the help of Thor, Thanos' forces have been overpowered. Thanos arrives and turns the situation in his favor. In a last effort, Scarlet Witch destroys Vision to keep the Mind Stone from Thanos, but with the Time Stone, Thanos reverses the situation and resurrects Vision and completes his collection of the Infinity Stones. Thor tries his best to kill Thanos with Stormbreaker, but Thanos has enough strength to snap his fingers and escape Wakanda, and the effects of this snap are shown as half of the universe, including half of the Avengers, are snapped out of existence. Simultaneous to the events of Avengers Infinity Wars, we see Hank Pym try to rescue Janet from the quantum realm with the help of Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, who defend the quantum tunnel from Ghost. Ultimately, on escaping the quantum realm, Janet temporarily heals Ghost of her condition. However, for a permanent solution, Scott Lang goes back into the quantum realm for quantum healing particles. However, as Hank, Hope, and Janet are about to pull him out, they too are snapped out of existence as a result of Thanos' snap. This leaves Scott Lang stuck in the quantum realm. Endgame. The events of Endgame begin with Hawkeye's family vanishing due to Thanos' snap. Around the same time, Iron Man and Nebula escape Titan by repairing a ship. The Avengers, including Captain America, Hulk, Black Widow, War Machine, and Rocket, head to the planet where Thanos is. Thanos is weakened in his current state. The Avengers restrain Thanos, and Thor cuts off the arm with the gauntlet. Yet the stones are surprisingly missing. Thanos claims he used the stones to destroy the stones, thus nullifying the plan set to reverse the action of the stones and bring half the universe back. Thor, exasperated, kills Thanos. Fast forward 5 years, the Avengers are shown as trying to get by and rebuild their lives. Meanwhile, Scott Lang is pushed out of the quantum realm in a freak accident and is shocked at the state of the world. He learns of Thanos and the snap. Lang heads to the Avengers facility and meets the Avengers, where he tells them time works differently in the quantum realm. He proposes time travel as a method to try to turn the situation once again in their favor. The Avengers approach Tony Stark for his support. Stark refuses to help, saying he is settled. The Avengers then approach Hulk for his support. Meanwhile, Stark has a change of heart and starts to work out the time travel solution that the Avengers need. Meanwhile, Black Widow has been informed that Hawkeye has gone berserk and is on a killing spree targeting criminals across the world. Meanwhile, Thor has created his own Asgard on Earth. The Avengers approach Thor to join forces, and the God of Thunder agrees after much convincing. Black Widow manages to convince Hawkeye to join forces once again. The Avengers now test their plan for time travel and find it successful. They also plan out how to regain control of the Infinity Stones to prevent Thanos from taking them all and snapping half the universe out of the existence. The Avengers split into teams to go back in time to get the stones using the Pym particles. Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, and Ant-Man go back to 2012. Thor and Rocket go back to 2013, and Black Widow, Hawkeye, Nebula, and War Machine go to 2014 to retrieve the stones from their original time periods. Stark, Rogers, Lang, and Banner arrive in New York 2012 during the first Avengers fight against Thanos' forces. Banner convinces the Ancient One to give him the Time Stone by revealing that Doctor Strange willingly handed it over to Thanos in the future. Captain America too successfully gets the Mind Stone by pretending to be a Hydra agent. Unfortunately, Lang and Stark fail to retrieve the Space Stone from the Tesseract, and Loki escapes with the Tesseract yet again. Rogers and Stark travel further back in time to 1970 to steal the Tesseract and more Pym particles from a time when Howard Stark and Hank Pym were still alive. At the same time, Rocket and Thor travel to Asgard to the events of Thor: The Dark World to retrieve the Reality Stone from Jane Foster, who is infected with it. Rocket manages to complete the mission successfully, while Thor has a heart-to-heart conversation with his mother one last time. In 2014, on the planet Morag, Nebula and Rhodes get the Power Stone from Peter Quill, and while Rhodes successfully returns to the present, Nebula gets trapped behind due to her present-time cybernetic implants reacting with those of her 2014 self. This leads the 2014 Thanos to learn of the future, in which he discovers and destroys all Infinity Stones. Nebula is captured and tortured, and the older Nebula from 2014 is sent back to the future in disguise to retrieve the Infinity Stones for her father. Finally, Barton and Romanoff travel to Vormir to get the Soul Stone. They discover the horrible secret that the Soul Stone requires sacrifice, and after a brief fight, Romanoff kills herself so that Barton can get the stone and return to the present. All the Infinity Stones now exist in the present, and with the help of a new gauntlet, Banner wields them to restore everyone who was killed with Thanos' snap. He gets weakened in the process and thus has limited abilities in his right arm throughout the rest of the movie. Meanwhile, the past Nebula brings back Thanos and his army to the present with her present form imprisoned by Gamora. Thanos now plans to destroy the world again, but this time he wants complete and not partial annihilation, having learned from his past mistakes. At the same time, the future Nebula, who is imprisoned, manages to convince Gamora to join the good guys, and they turn against the old Nebula, and the future Nebula kills her. Thanos meanwhile battles Captain America, Iron Man and Thor, and proves to be strong enough for all three of them. It is in this fight that we see Captain America wield Mjolnir for the very first time. The situation seems close to hopeless as Thanos' armies advance. However, the Avengers are helped by the unsnapped Doctor Strange, who transports armies of Wakanda with T'Challa, Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man, Asgardians, and Ravagers to hold a final stand. Captain Marvel too returns to help out in an epic battle scene. Thanos manages to seize the gauntlet during the battle, but unknown to him, Stark has removed the stones and snaps his fingers to bring an end to Thanos' army. This, however, costs Stark his life. After a heartwarming funeral for Stark, Thor joins the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they set off in apparent search of Gamora, as it is unclear whether she survived Stark's snap. Meanwhile, Captain America uses Hank Pym's time machine to return the Infinity Stones to their original locations in time. He also decides to not return and rather live out his dream life with Peggy. After a few minutes in present time, Rogers finally returns as an old man, having lived all his years happily in time travel, and passes on his shield to Sam Wilson as Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, watches. The final scene cuts to show a happy Rogers and Peggy Carter in their home dancing as they lovingly embrace the life they always wished to live out together. Like what you saw? Do support us by hitting the like button. Comment below and let us know the ones you're eager to catch. Hope you enjoyed our video and do not forget to share. For more great content, subscribe to our channel. See you next time.